Okay, let's get going. Welcome to the next Learn Web3 with Colony. This is going to be the fourth episode, I think. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Just to get this out of the way, we have this GitHub repository where you can view past episodes and the schedule, where you can see when our episodes are gonna stream and at what time. I decided to do a little midnight stream today, so please bear with me. It is 2 a.m. where I am, so this might be a little bit all over the place, but I guess we'll see. There's a link also to the past episodes on YouTube. I'm uploading them as I go. Here you can see the playlist. The link is in the GitHub repository. I'm just gonna paste that into the chat. It is basically on our Join Colony GitHub user page or GitHub org page, and I guess I'm just gonna pin it up to the top repository so that everyone can follow along. Cool. So past episodes, we went there. So what are we gonna do today? Today I just want to do a very quick session on Colony itself, because we are building something that interacts with Colony in the end in this course. I just want to get everyone up to speed of what Colony is and how we can use it as developers. So for that purpose, I made a little FigJam. So please bear with me. I almost feel silly making this diagram here on the left, but bear with me. There's going to be some explanation for it. So there's a way to run your decentralized autonomous organization with Colony. How does that work? So in a sense, it's super simple. That's why I kind of feel silly making this, but it's like it's gonna be much more clear when I continue here. We get into the nitty-gritty details soon. So what happens here? Let's say your organization gets funds. They go into the Colony smart contract. So whenever you deploy a Colony with our framework, then you get an own smart contract for your DAO, which is your Colony. And there's actually a bunch of other contracts surrounding it that also get deployed. But for now, let's just call this our Colony contract. And in a sense, this contract takes all the funds, saves them, stores them as it can work as a treasury, and then it distributes it to contributors. It's as easy as that. This is kind of the essence of Colony. It's so simple. But the way it is distributed to contributors, and the way these contributors can then decide upon the future of their organization differs quite a bit. To other DAO frameworks, I would say. So I kind of left out this very crucial and important part here. The contributors govern the their colony, their DAO. They govern their funds, and they also govern they also decide what kind of actions are being taken within the organization. So in this diagram here, there's a lot going on in this kind of area, right? It's a bit of a black box. There's a lot of stuff happening here. So what is this exactly? Let's just zoom out a little bit and take a closer look at what this is. So kind of nowadays, like this blue box is kind of this diagram here. Nowadays, everything is a stack. So I just called this the colony stack. It's a stack. I made it a stack in the picture. So now it's cool. To me, there's like 3 important parts to how Colony works. And on their own, they're fairly straightforward, fairly simple. I think at the core of it all, or to me, the core of it all is the reputation system. There are ways to get reputation. There are ways to lose reputation. And this is what kind of, makes everything run. Everything is kind of built around this system. So what is reputation? Reputation is something that you can receive within your colony. And it's not necessarily tied to a token. That means you can get reputation without getting tokens. You can get tokens without reputation. But most of the times is when people have, like, let's say someone does a contribution to your organization and gets certain knowledge, or should be receiving a reward. In this case, we can basically tell them, oh, here is reputation. That means you have contributed to our project. It gets more interesting. So hang on, bear with me here. This person then can use their reputation to govern the colony. The cool thing about this is that reputation can never be bought easily. It's always tied to work for the organization, which is a crucial factor when it comes to governance later. Another thing that is important to mention is that reputation decreases over time, so it has a half-life, which basically means that you want to keep on doing work for your colony, and otherwise your reputation will decline at some point. That means, for example, if you have very early contributors, they have to keep on doing work. Otherwise, their influence will also decline in this organization, which makes sense. So you cannot buy in at some point in the beginning and then just relax. That's not how it works. So another interesting part that ties into that is your company or organizational structure. This is by no means a hierarchy necessarily. This is just a logical structure that a lot of companies have that are divided into functional teams. let's look at this. For example, this is just an example that we have. We always have in an organization, or let's say in a colony in our case, a root team. I will be using the terms team and domain interchangeably here. We call them teams or domains. These are the functional parts, the functional pieces of an organization. And within that root domain that always exists could be the functional team development and the functional team business. And then in the development team, there is, for example, a front-end and a back-end team. This is just an example. The cool thing about this is that, first of all, whenever you get reputation in a team. That means you can have reputation in multiple teams, for example, and that means when it comes to governance, in the end, your governance will also be tied to certain teams. Your governance influence will also be tied to certain teams. Important to mention here that every team, like in, let's say, a traditional organization, sometimes has a funding pot. That means every team can receive money from the root colony team and spend that money on however they want, basically. And money can be moved around within these teams, for example. But the traditional flow would be, it goes from the root, and this is where all of the money lands when it comes into your colony, and it goes from there into your different departments, and then gets kind of thinned out on the way down. Then the people who are in these departments can basically govern over that funding that their team has and make decisions about this funding. So that means if you do work in the business domain, you will also get reputation in the business domain. And then you share that reputation in the business domain with others who have also done work in the business domain. So I think the third pillar for me are expenditures and native tokens. So what are expenditures? Expenditures for us are the entity of a payment. And that payment can be as complex or as simple as you would like it to be. That means a payment means your colony or a domain pays, let's say, a wallet address or another smart contract. Also, that is possible. We have a couple of ways to do that. I will explain that when I get to extensions. But expenditures, you have to think of it as a very, very simple payment from within the colony, from some point within the colony, to an external wallet or a contract. As simple as that. I put here native tokens as well. So our current assumption is that reputation is tied to a token in the sense that you receive reputation whenever you are being paid in a certain token. That doesn't mean it is tied to the token afterwards. It's just tied to the token in terms of the payment. After that's done, the basically token and reputation can go their separate ways. And this is how we currently determine the amount of reputation someone gets after doing some work in a certain domain. On top of this, on top of these three basic pillars we build a complex system of extensions. Let's start with payments. Payments I already mentioned. Currently, we support a payment which what we call one transaction payment, and that is basically just to send an external wallet funds from a domain. That can be either a single token or multiple tokens, but it can also be a single recipient or multiple recipients at the same time. And that is all in one transaction. That's kind of the only extension for payments that we currently support. There is going to be more, for example, streaming payments. That means like salaries, for example, or a very involved task workflow. Actually, I made a tiny slide for this. Yeah. So okay, whatever I said just now, here's your visual aid for this. So we have one-off payments is what we have now. Streaming payments and managed tasks are going to be there in the future, and there's a whole lot more that you can think of in terms of payments. That we could implement on top of our infrastructure. Another very important extension is currently the only governance extension that we support. So as you can see, everything is kind of modular. You kind of basically pick and choose whatever fits your DAO or your organization. The only governance extension that we currently support is motions and disputes. It is based on what we call lazy consensus. So that means usually we believe that decisions in organizations are made on a daily basis and maybe even on an hourly basis. Everyone is making decisions all the time. And we think that no one should ever ask everyone, especially not everyone, to ratify their decisions. We basically think that there is a lot of stuff that goes on a day-to-day basis, and some people who are just very proficient in what they do, they basically just decide and yes, and only they basically just make decisions, and only if there's an objection to these decisions, then there will be voting, and then there will be consequences in terms of governance. But apart from that, we think then there's like smaller and bigger decisions. Most of the time, there are monetary thresholds that you can apply to these decisions in your DAO. This is what we do. And then you can basically say, okay, here is where we draw the line, and here is where we should go to vote. But most of the time, you don't really need to vote. You basically just need to make decisions. And at some point, when people can see these decisions being made and these decisions kind of being publicized, and after a certain amount of time, if no one objects, it just happens. And this is what motions and disputes is all about. The important thing here is that it's reputation-based. So no token-weighted voting. Everything is just about reputation. That means if you don't have reputation, you cannot vote. If you don't have reputation in the specific domain where this motion is being proposed, you cannot vote. That is to limit the amount of people who vote to the people who are proficient in that particular domain. We have a concept of staking That means whenever you feel strongly about a decision that's being made, you need to put your money where your mouth is and actually stake some tokens that you can lose depending on the outcome of the voting. We also have a system in place where voters can be rewarded to vote independent of the outcome of the vote, to kind of counteract voter fatigue. So these are just some examples of the extensions that we provide. This is kind of the very basics right now. I think I explained all of the important concepts that the stack consists of. Let me just quickly mention the meta colony, which kind of sits adjacent here to this stack. The meta colony is the DAO of Colony. It decides about the future and of the future of our organization and pays out contributors like me. We will be taking a look at it in a bit because it's open for everyone, and that's kind of also a very important claim. We think that organizations should be open and transparent so that anyone can see what's going on. All right, this was my little FigJam. I hope I made it clear what's happening. If not, just let me know in the comments. I will try to explain the concepts a bit more in detail as soon as we get to it in the actual coding later on. Okay, let's take a look at how our application looks now. So what we will be doing is not something that is embedded in this context. We will create a different app outside of our application. But our dApp here, what you can see here, is basically our canonical way of accessing the Colony contracts. And what I opened here is the meta colony. I'm logged in with a demo account, and you can see here the contributors, people who have reputation or people who earned reputation in the past. You can see here our treasury. This is what we have currently in available funds in the meta colony. And you can see some incoming funds here, which is funds that were sent to the colony that can be claimed. And you can see things that happened, actions. So for example, you can see here, pay an address 500 XDAI, and that is most likely, because it's the only extension that we currently support for payment, a payment that was made from a domain. Let's take a look at it. So you can see here is a tiny explanation of what this is about. And you can see that we paid 500 XDAI from root domain to an address. This particular payment doesn't incur reputation because we decided that only people who are being paid in CLNY, which is our native token for our colony, only those transactions give you reputation. For example, this one here. Actually, let's take a look at if it comes back. No. Okay, let's reload. As you can see, there's minor hiccups with the dApp sometimes. That's why we also want to improve that. We're in the process of improving that. Sometimes things just take very, very long. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at this transaction, and this was made to me. And here you can also see that this was a motion that I created. That means I didn't say, hey, I decide that I'm going to be paid. No, I basically said, here's a proposal of me to get paid. Please, everyone, confirm this or acknowledge this. And as you can see, it passed. You can see it here. That means after a couple of days, usually a motion passes if no one objects, and then you can claim the payment that you are being owed. This is exactly what happened here. What we saw earlier is something that we call a forced transaction. That means someone who has the right permissions in the colony. We have like a permission system as well for bootstrapping your organization. That means usually you start with a couple of people and then you want to have maybe some permissions that can do a lot more in the beginning, and then we recommend usually to gradually remove these permissions. What we will be building later on is not something like this, I think. I think what we will be building is a simpler workflow where people who have the right permission can pay someone directly without creating a motion. At least in the beginning, and then let's see how complex we want to make it in the end. But for our purposes, what we will be using is the other kind where someone just directly decides to pay someone, like this one here, for example. But I don't want to talk about our project too much at this point. I think there's going to be another FigJam for this, where I talk about the details of the project I want to be building. And of course, let's see if we can make this work. Probably not. Oh no. Okay, yeah, this is bad. Okay, let's try to, oh my God. Okay, I don't care too much about this anymore. Let's just close it. Okay, just, yeah, there was a tiny demo of the dApp which doesn't work properly at the moment. It's going to be better soon. But also we don't really care about that because we're building our own stuff. I just want to quickly mention that all of our Solidity contracts are also open source. If you want to take a look at them and how everything works, it's in the Colony network repository of the Joint Colony organization. And the most important part here that you might want to look at is the contracts directory. And there you can see a bunch of things that yeah, might be interesting for you. For example, you can take a look at the Colony contracts themselves. As I said, they're split up in different contracts here. Especially the interface contracts might be interesting because these are the functions that we will be using later on. So let's take a quick look to this one. Yeah, you can see that there are some functions to set certain roles for users, that like the permissions that I talked about earlier. Installing extensions, upgrading extensions, things like that. Adding domains to your Colony with in the domain tree, and in certain ways editing these domains, things like that. This is all stuff that your Colony does. Where it gets really interesting are the extensions. And for example, let's take a look at the one payment transaction, one text payment transaction. So that one has the interesting function of make payment, or make payment funded from domain, which is very interesting. So that means you can basically make a payment from root, or you can make a payment from a certain domain to someone, and that will also incur reputation if it is in the native token of the Colony. There's a bunch of other things in here. Most of them are not super interesting for us at the moment. Another one would be voting reputation, and this is what I showed you earlier with the motion that we went through. In this case, the I voting reputation is also more interesting, and this is again some functions related to the governance functionality that I showed you earlier. So that's quite interesting. I don't want to go too deep into this at the moment. We will take a much deeper look at it, or at the specific functions when we implement them. If this is a little bit too involved for you, and I feel like it probably is because it's still a bit too involved for me as well, then you should take a look at Colony SDK, which is incidentally the tool that we are going to be using to create our little tiny dApp, which interacts with Colony. Colony SDK is something that I've written to make it a little bit easier to interact with the Colony contracts. I hope it is well enough documented. It is definitely, there's a lot of documentation for it, and I hope it is simple enough to get started with it. Yeah, I just want to quickly mention that it exists. You can check out its website. It's just join Colony, and then the repository name is Colony SDK. There's also docs for it that you find in docs.colony.io. Sorry, it's late. There you go under develop, and then Colony SDK, and then you will see the documentation for it, and also some guides on how to create your first transaction, or how to create a Colony with the SDK, for example. Usually, when using the SDK, you probably will go under the assumption that a Colony already exists, and this is also what we are going to be doing in our little excursion. Yeah, there is the auto-generated API for it. You can take a look especially at the Colony class, which is interesting, and there you can see a lot of the functions that are also in the contract. I think here in a lot of cases I simplified it a little bit. and I added some defaults that are probably good for most users. For example, here you can see that when you have a colony, then you just want to pay someone. You can just say it's the same thing that we saw earlier. You can just say, oh, I wanna use the one transaction extension, and I want to pay this address with 10 of my native token. Native token is assumed here. You can also just put in a token that you want, and you can also say, I want to pay them from a certain domain. In this case, it's going to be the root domain. So there's some certain defaults here, and it's going to be it's a little bit easier to grasp because a lot of the complexity is just hidden here. Yeah, that's Colony SDK. If you want to take a look, do that. You're very welcome to check it out. A very important piece of information that I didn't give you for that is that there are examples, and actually quite a few. So if you want to check out examples that you can just run in your browser or in Node.js on your computer, check out these examples. For example, there's a very basic example here where you can check the funding in the meta colony, for example, of a certain token. Or like we have automation here where you can pay a bunch of people with a bunch of different amounts, just using the pay function that we saw earlier. So there's a whole lot of examples that you can check out. I hope they are going to be helpful. I hope they work. I usually test them every once in a while, so I think they're probably still okay. Yeah, I added some browser examples. You can see here. These are for example, motions, and these I can test in a browser and just use MetaMask for them. So yeah, this was my little intro. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments or wherever you are watching this. And I'm really excited to get going. Next time we are going to do the first programming session, and we set up all kinds of things. We set up a new repository with Next.js, Colony SDK, ethers, and see if we can put something on the screen. So I think that's going to be super exciting. I hope you will join me for that. It's going to be actually the day after tomorrow, 5 p.m. CET. Yeah, and that's it from my side for today. I hope you enjoyed this little excursion, and I hope to see you when we get coding. Thank you, and bye-bye.